In this video, we're going to talk about how to license a Wonderware 2017 system. There has been significant changes in the licensing model for this release of Wonderware. Licenses will now need to be activated. We have the ability to activate those directly online, or we have the ability to activate those offline. Prior to the Wonderware 2017 release, installing the licensing on the system was not the easiest task in the world. You'd have to know what license file got installed on which node. In this example I'm showing on the screen, installing on a server was not terrible. If you have individual PCs out there, you'd have to figure out what license file got installed on which PC. With the 2017 release of Wonderware, we have this concept of a licensed server. So we're going to install all the licenses on a licensed server. We'll use that server to actually validate against a Wonderware cloud system to validate all the licensing. And we'll have this one place to maintain the license. All the clients and all the historians and all the other nodes will point to that license server and consume licensing as they need. We also have a concept of a backup license server. So should your primary license server be down when you're trying to acquire a license, the system will direct you over to the backup license server, and that client or that node that's trying to acquire a license will successfully get a license from the backup license server. So as we discussed, these licenses will need to be activated. So you will receive a license file. You have to install that license file on that license server that you previously installed. And then there's going to be an activate button on the screen where you have to have a direct connection to the Wonderware activation server. It's going to send some information about your server, a unique ID about that server, pass that information up to the Wonderware license activation server, and then it's going to download the activation key and it's going to enable those licenses. In the previous slide, we discussed how to activate a license when we do have an active internet connection. We know a lot of SCADA systems, a lot of Wonderware systems are not directly connected to the internet. So we have a mechanism of doing that. We basically have the ability to capture some information from the license server, the unique ID of that, take that on a USB via SneakerNet over to a computer that has a connection to the Wonderware license activation server, log in there, pass that information up to the Wonderware license system. Then we will download an activation key. Then we can SneakerNet that back to the actual license server and enable the license. So once you have the licenses installed on the license server, then you will need to go to the individual machines, whether it's a historian or whether it's a terminal server, whether it's an InTouch node, and point them to the actual license server. And then those components, historian, InTouch, whatever it might be, will consume one of those licenses off the license server. So you're going to designate a node on the system as your license server, maybe a backup license server. So when you're doing the installation, you're going to have to check the licensing option there to install the Schneider Electric License Manager and the Schneider Electric License Server to be able to do the configuration of the licensing. So let's go activate a 2017 license. So if I go to the Schneider Electric License Manager, you can see it's showing the node that I'm on here. It shows that there's no licenses installed. If I click on that, it doesn't show any components installed at this time. So if I click on Add License, it's going to ask me to browse for a license file. So there's a license file you would receive from InSource. If I click on this file, it's actually an XML file now, and I say open that. And it's going to tell me this is a Development Studio Unlimited, in my case it's a 30-day temp license. In your case it would be a real license. So I'm going to need to choose the license that I want to activate. In this case I only have one, so I'm going to select this license and then I'm going to hit activate. At this point it's connecting to Wonderware's cloud service, connecting to the license server at Wonderware. It's going to pass along this unique ID of my server, and it's going to download an actual key that allows me to run these licenses on this machine. So now the license status got changed to activated. So the validation process was successful, reaching up to the Wonderware cloud and activating that license. So now let's step through the process of activating an offline license. So the first thing I need to do is go put this into offline mode. So I set the offline activation mode. I click on my server and I click I want to add a license. I go browse for my license file and I say open. And then I basically click here and I say activate. So what it's going to do, it tells me that it's offline activation here, then I have to say request activation file. So basically what's going to happen is going to create a file for me that I need to go send to Wonderware. So it's generating this file right here. So now I need to go to a computer with internet access and go to licenseactivation.wonderware.com, and it's going to ask me for that file that was generated by the license server. We have to enter our security code there and upload the file. And then the system returned this file right here, the receive file, in the download directory, which now I need to go take to my license server and load that file. So I'm back on my license server, and I need to finish the validation with the file that we just got from Wonderware. So I'm going to say receive activation deactivation. So there's that file, the receive file. I'm going to open that. It's going to go through the validation process. And now it's going to say that our license is indeed activated. So this license utility will allow me to go see what licenses I have. So that license that we just activated enabled a lot of different things because it's a demo license. It enabled my historian, it enabled historian client, historian insight. You can see down here it enabled InTouch, 25 sessions of InTouch, 5 sessions of InTouch development. So these are all the components that got enabled by that one license file. The License Manager also lets me see what licenses are being used currently. So if I click on usage details, it's telling me that I have my historian licenses that are being used right now. So the only thing on this node, the only thing it's being subscribed to that's consuming licensing. So let's go run a supervisory client and see if it consumes one of those licenses. So I'm going to launch an InTouch OMI, one of our newer OMI applications here. And I'm going to go to, say, my desktop. I'm going to minimize that. And then we're going to go look at our license utility here. So I'm going to give it a refresh and see if that license is being consumed. So you can see now that supervisory client right here, the supervisory client came in. It's using 1 out of 25 supervisory clients. So that InTouch OMI application went to the actual license server and made a reservation for 1 client. So now I'm going to go to my supervisory client, my OMI node there, and I'm going to shut that down, and that license should be released from the License Manager. So I'm going to do a refresh here, and you can see now the supervisory client is gone from the list. Returned it back to the pool of license that would be available on the license server. So all the licensing now is concurrent. So I can have different reservations that log into the License Manager, check out an InTouch application, or check out an OMI client. When that client shuts down, it's going to release the license to make it available to another node. So by default, all the licensing is concurrent. So if I have 10 user licenses for InTouch, 20 different people, 100 different people can use that InTouch application, but only 10 at a time. But that can cause a problem if I have some dedicated HMI terminals in my control room that I want to make sure that they take priority of getting a license. I have the ability to go in and reserve some licenses for a specific node or a specific user. So if I click on the reservations tab here, you can see the supervisory client here, and I added this actual device here. So I can give it a device name that's going to reserve a license for this supervisory client for that specific client. So when he goes and gets a license, it's not being consumed by other users out there. So one thing we haven't talked about in the video is how do we have a client point to a license server? So when you first install some 2017 software, it's going to bring you to the configurator, and during that configuration process, you're going to point that to the license server. So this is the configurator here, and basically you're going to point it to the license server, test that connection, and then we're going to go through the configuration process, and it's going to connect to the license server, and it's going to tell us that it made a connection to the license server and it was successful. So you can see if I go and start a supervisory client on my other node, it's going to connect to the license server and consume one of those licenses as you see on the screen. Well, thank you for watching today. I think this new Wonderware licensing model is going to be a welcome change to the licensing system. It's going to make things a lot easier to get your system activated. If you have any questions, please contact me at the email address on the screen. Thanks again for watching.